Hey everyone, welcome to my EX3 tier list. Don't worry, the AI content will be coming soon. We're just making a few improvements, but we'll be right back there. So, the EX3. It's a meta that I would like to call the Crimson Blaze meta. Either you are weak to Crimson Blaze, or you can use Crimson Blaze, or you're unaffected by Crimson Blaze. Because it's that central, right? So for example, let's start with Aegis. Cannot use Crimson Blaze. That automatically kicks it out of the first tier. Now, personally, I think Aegis is a niche deck. It could get better. It does have access to a new card called Sorai, which is kind of like Crimson Blaze but blue, where you get to basically stun anything on the field that doesn't have Digivolution cards. Better for a slower deck that likes to control, but I think that Aegis itself is good. It's just that it doesn't have good support in its lower tier cards, lower level cards. That's just where it stands, in my opinion. Now, Alpha. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. I won my store champs with Alpha, and it saddens me to put it into tier 2. Hopefully they can reprint Adora Gray. That's not as good, and still enables the use of the deck story deck, since I actually never had a chance to play that. Speaking of niche decks, actually, yeah, Gallantmon. I think, you know, it has a lot of different ways you could play it. I think it's a fun deck. Fun fact, it's a Sky Dragon, so you can actually search it out with Hina, or one of the other cards. I don't remember if Hina's a searcher, actually. It's fun. There's not really much to say. Like, I think people could innovate with it. Machine Dramon. Oof. Okay. Machine Dramon. Hear me out. Chaos Dramon. I put it in tier 2 because it's fun, right? First of all, Machine Dramon decks are hella fun. But secondly, the new Chaos Dramon doesn't actually do anything to increase the offensive power of the deck, which is where I find it's lacking. Right? Like, it's got really good defense, it's got really good staying power. It gave it more of a control option with the Digivolve, but it's not like the deck is slow and it has no options to control on its way to building up, and you could lose by then. Like, the deck, the game's really fast now, so I don't know. Like, sure, you know, you can play some level 5 blockers, whatever. It's just not there yet. BT12 is more interesting, for sure. We'll have to see whether it comes with that. Now, D Brigade. The new D Brigade. It's on the cusp. I'm gonna put it in 1.5. It was my first deck. I love this deck. Don't get me wrong. I love black, but I don't think it's just quite there, but by God. Because you see, it gets countered by Crimson Blaze. That's always what happens, right? It's Crimson Blaze. The whole reason that you don't leave Gallantmon in the bulk is because it can run Crimson Blaze, and this is weak to Crimson Blaze. So this deck puts the Rush in Rookie Rush, right? You can apply Rush to all your Command Dramons. You get jamming with your Seals Dramon. It's just buffed. It's great, and it's also a good counter to Bloom Lord or any deck that has to, like, can only do single target removal and is bad at a multi-target removal and can't do it efficiently every turn. It gives a good fight. I like it. Dark Knight. Now, Dark Knight, if you asked me before the ban list, I would have put it in 1.5 because it counters Crossheart to a certain extent. I think Crossheart players know how to counter back a little more and have learned how to play against Dark Knight, but it isn't an easy matchup. But now that Cross 4 is banned and putting the Crossheart deck lower on the list, this has to follow, right? Because it doesn't actually do anything that's interesting against decks that don't run Tamers as much. In a way, it could be good against, like, Lynx Dragons as a weird counter pick. I wouldn't expect it, but there you have it. Examon. Examon. It's a strong deck. I have to put it minimum at 1.5. But it's a strong 1-stack deck. Okay, well maybe 2-stack, because it spawns another card when you play it. But it gets countered with anything that has easy access to single target removal, such as Bloom Lord. Or if you're running Grandis, for example, you can easily swing over it. So that's really where its weaknesses are. It's weak to the top decks in the format, which automatically has to put it, you know, below. It's not weak to Crimson Blaze though, so there is that. Well, I guess it is actually weak to Crimson Blaze because it prevents it from playing the second level 6 when it gets played. So you can use Crimson Blaze against it, just not fully optimal, and maybe that's why you can put it in tier 1.5. So Gaio and Black or Gray. It's still good for the same reasons. It's, you know, Tamer Hate, Big Fat Blocker, Blitz, Restand, the whole shebang, right? That's really good, except Crossheart is, again, not as good. Therefore, the Tamer Hate isn't as valuable because you're not deleting as many cool boys as you might have, or the Kodas, or in this case, Taikis, etc., etc. So it's good insofar as decks that use Tamers are good. I think that's a pretty popular opinion, and I don't think I'm breaking the mold there. So Gallantmon. Gallantmon. Honestly, a lot better. Just from the 3 cards it gets, because it speeds up the deck, disrupts your opponent, and the problem was that Gallant couldn't get all the way up fast enough, or trigger its effects at a high, like, at a good enough value, and it accelerates that, and I honestly think we'll be seeing a lot more of Gallant. Grandis. Oh, Grandis. How you've proven to us that you will never leave. Still an amazing OTK deck. Gets access to the new Kokuamon, which accelerates a lot of what it can do. Not particularly weak to Crimson Blaze, because it plays in Raising. And if it doesn't play in Raising, well, you're not supposed to, but if it's playing Searchers, it's already done its job. The Searcher, it can die. Fine, whatever. It's not really trying to play by effect, so, yeah, tier 1, easy. Lynx Dragons. Now hear me out. I think Lynx Dragons are pretty darn good, if you see your Tamer. Now, do you see your Tamer all the time? No. And if you don't see your Tamer, you're screwed. But I can tell you from experience that if they see their Tamer, you will not be able to do anything. If they see if there's 2 Hinas on the field, you just don't have Digimon, right? So if you're playing in Raising, you're playing, you know, Grandis, fine, you know, like, you don't care, whatever. But if you're playing literally anything else, you're not gonna have a good time, because the Evolve and Destruction options that it has on basically on evolution, and then the Hina Tamer being really good, honestly. Yeah, I would say that you would be wrong to underestimate it, and also you should not play Ragnar Lord in it, because it just doesn't work with the deck, so don't try putting in Ragnar Lord for DNA, for a cheeky DNA. Just don't. Unless you're using it like a Blitz Omni, but even then, I don't recommend it. Okay. So, Bloom. I'm biased here, but Bloom Lord / Hydra is tier 1. I would have said that before the crossword bans, but now with the crossword band, it's even more better. Like, because you're not dealing with Sunrise Buster, you're not dealing with Cross 4. You are dealing with Crimson Blaze and Death X being weak to both of those Digimon. And I do need to make an addendum here, that when I say a Crimson Blaze meta, I also mean Death X by proxy. But Crimson Blaze is, I think, a lot easier to play out than Death X. So I'll be focused on that. And I think it genuinely affects the meta. Because not every deck can play Crimson Blaze, but almost every deck can play Death X. So, I mean, what else is there to say, though, about Bloom Hydra? It's Green's version of a Death X, and Ice Wall in one card. It's stupid, Hydramon, like, the Hydra is there. I think it's a deck that's hard to run to counter every kind of deck you're going to run into. There's going to be a lot of different builds of it. I think it's going to be interesting to see a deck that solely builds around Hydramon as the main card rather than having Bloom Lord as like its offensive side. Have a few purely defensive green deck. It remains to be seen. Okay. So, classic Imperial. When I say classic, I do mean the recent Imperial. I mean blue-green Imperial. You know what? Excellent. Still an excellent deck. I don't know where I'd put it in tier 1.5. It's somewhere there. Excellent deck. Still good at what it does. I think because people are running more Crimson Blaze and more things in, more options in security, I think that it is likely to be, you know, it's likely to not succeed as much, but the game plan's the same. Still just as good IMO. Great deck. Can't really fault it for anything. But a red-purple Imperial, I'm gonna have to put it at the bottom of the same tier. Like, if not a tier 2. I'm still hesitant. I'll put it in tier 1. I think it can succeed. I'm just bad. But it's so close to being good because it just requires so many pieces, right? And the odds of you seeing all those pieces is low until you get to the mid game. And the payoff is just a board wipe and a big body, which is great, but if there is no board to board wipe, you're not getting the full value, and then having a big body in the end, you know, that's easily countered nowadays because everyone's running like their one option to kill to get rid of something. Kaitis Breath, Grandel Soul, Gaia Force, whatever. People are just, you know, they're ready for something big, and they have that one-off option a lot of the time. Again, though, can run Crimson Blaze and is not weak to Crimson Blaze. Is not weak to Death Hex. Well, almost wants Death Hex to pop off. So, you know, that's why I would say tier 1.5 and not 2, actually. Yeah. Jasmine, tier 1. I don't think anyone's doubting that. It is, I would say, weak to Bloom Lord, and now we need to make an aside here. Bloom Lord kind of counters Bloom Hydra. Kind of counters any deck that wants to play cards by effect with the BT9 Pokemon. Jasmine exclusively wants to play cards by effect. If you get a BT9 Pokemon early that they can't kill, and you're supposed to run more than 2, if you ask me. You know, if you see them and you keep playing them, they're not gonna get anything on board, right? That's all their value gone, and they swing. You've got Hydramon on the field. They lose memory. That's it. You know, it's a hard matchup. It's an extremely hard matchup for Jasmine, and it's gonna be a common matchup for Jasmine in tier 1. So Crimson Blaze counters Hydra. I think it's gonna be a very interesting matchup, and yeah, we have to see what comes of it. Now, there's also actually the new Sistermon to look out for that lets it Digivolve when swinging. Well, when it's played, you can Digivolve, and because you play her while you're swinging, you get to evolve again. So basically, you'll end up with like super mega evolve shenanigans where you'll evolve like 20,000 times in one attack. And do watch out for that if you end up with a lot of Jasmine in your locals. That's not going to be fun to deal with, speaking from experience. So, Armor. I think we can all say that Armor has surprised us recently with its performance in BT10. With the Jasmine GX Armor deck that everyone's seen recently. I think that it's still a deck that's susceptible to bouncing And because of all of the bouncing that is there, and the forced attacking in Examon, I think that it's not going to be as good. I think it's going to be really good, but not as good. I think we'll put it in tier 1.5 just because of that. I think that the top decks are able to steamroll over it, basically. I think Grandis and Jess can just you know, go through it. Maybe there's the one off turn. I think it'll hold up a fight pretty well, but you know, I think it's gonna be able. I think those two decks are gonna be able to jump over it, and Bloom Lord could do the same. Slash, can just bounce it with Hydramon. So, slash Grand also. But, oh, and another thing actually, wait. That armor deck is also weak to Crimson Blaze. So, there's that. Mastay, that's sad. I think it's a tier 2. Not even niche. Yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, it didn't get any new tools to play with. Still pretty much the same game. Ordine is a little more viable now because people are playing wider boards. Could be a fun pick, but it's still really slow. You have to build up to a level 7. Not the most optimal game plan compared to everyone else. Blue Flare. I'm gonna put that as another tier 1 deck because I think people haven't seen what Blue Flare can do yet as much. It gets access to the new Sorai, which, you know, stuns everything. Yeah, still exceptionally good. You know, it's just blue hybrid shenanigans without Tommy. So, a little weaker than blue hybrid IMO, but still really good. Can rush you down, do Crossheart shenanigans, like, not Crossheart, save shenanigans. I think people will come to see this as a good deck soon. Yeah, I mean, blue's always been on top of Western metas, and I can't imagine that stopping now. Ragnar Lord niche. I think it counters very specific decks. Because of Digimon being unaffected by Digimon's effects on the opponent's turns. So if you're kind of deck that doesn't run single target option removal, you're screwed. And if you don't see it, you're screwed. So yeah, you know, like Dark Knight for you, just as an example. Not that it would be relevant, but as an example, it kind of counters that. It becomes a big fat blocker, so anything that can't go over it has a hard time. Yeah, not much else to say really. I think people are underestimating it a little bit, but not a lot. D-Reaper will always not be bad. It'll never be amazing, I think, now, unless it's get more support. But a 7-turn timer is still OP, but Crimson Blaze is OP-er, and it gets countered by Crimson Blaze. Not by Death X though, so it makes it a little better. Minerva, not yet, Minerva. We'll go to Sakuyamon. I am unimpressed. Mostly just a waifu bait deck, if you ask me. Could do better. It's got some interesting shenanigans. I think people can. It gives the opportunity of a lot of creative deck building, which I think is not the same to say about a lot of other decks. Seems fun to play against too. I think, you know, you could play for fun. I don't see it getting anywhere though. Crossheart. Ooh, much sadness for people who like the deck. I mean, I'm happy that it's gone. Yeah, I'll just put it beneath Gaio. Gaio mostly counters the strategy. What is there to say? If people can adapt and use King version instead of Cross 4 to bring that Cross 4 over and over and make it a little less oppressive, but still good, and people learn how to play with the new restriction, and for some reason it performs well, then good for it, but I don't think it will. I think it's not as big of a nerf as the Adora Grey, if I'm being honest. So, Ooh, backer army. Just forget about it. It's not going. No, it's garbage. I tried. It's garbage. Just no. 4 Great Dragons. I think it's niche. I think people haven't found the right build for it yet. I think it's an interesting deck. It's very fun. It doesn't play like a lot of other Digimon decks. You could end up with an opponent who doesn't understand what it does and doesn't understand your win con, and just you're able to got a Goldramon early and win the game. But I don't see that happening right now. I think that it's a pretty one-dimensional deck when you get down to it, and leaves a little bit to be desired. But maybe, you know, it's just because I'm small-brained. So we'll see. Minerva. Okay, I'll just talk about you now. Minerva. You know, I had higher hopes for you. I think Minerva... I don't know. Like, I want it to be good. I think when Minerva's good, then, like, there's a chance for skill expression in the game. And I think this is one of those metas where, you know, it's not just about the deck you choose, but how well you play it. So I would put it at least in tier 1.5. Yeah. Venus, though. Ugh. Yeah, I don't think Venus is going anywhere without Yellow Hybrid there. They needed it, and it's not there. And by Yellow Hybrid, I do mean Jet Selfie. Without Jet Selfie, it doesn't do as much. It's a bit too slow. People are running Omni X. Yeah. No, because people are running Omni X in all these decks, that it makes it hard to justify, right? Makes it hard to justify being able to run a Secon deck nowadays. Okay, especially at the speed at which those games are going. So, but finally, we'll go with Werguru X, and honestly, that's pretty easy. We'll just put it in tier 1 because I don't think the deck is any worse than it was in BT9. Honestly, it gets access to Sorai. I don't think it'll run it. It is weak to the blockers that these decks can run, such as Examon or Chaosdramon or even Cherrymon and Hydra. It is weak to all of those things, but it also has access to floodgates to stop some of those things, and it can run the X antibody and Omni X, speaking of which. So the X antibody you can run in all these decks to prevent Sorai from stunning you, and you get access to Omni X, which is still a really good card and can be both used as a finisher and a safe finisher and control card. So yeah, I think that about settles where I'd put most of these decks. Anything that's in a tier can be rearranged. The tiers themselves could be rearranged. I think it's really hard to say which one's better than which in a specific tier. I won't be that conceited to think that I could do that. And yeah. No, yeah. So I think that about covers the Crimson Blaze meta. Thank you for watching. Please stay tuned for more Digimon content and AI related Digimon content down the line.